Hello, welcome back. This is the third episode, part 2 of our tutorial. As a reminder, we just began creating a social media application using Android Studio. In this video, we'll complete the login and register parts of our application as we started it on the previous video. But unfortunately, uh, something happened with the sound of it, and I had to quickly and briefly go through it. So this video is going to be uh, unfortunately long enough, and so let's get started. So previously we've created two activities. The first of one is which is being activity login, and we have to assign a context to it. So to do that, I'm going to use an attribute called tools context. I'm going to say that it is equal to login. And the same goes for the register part. Uh, Tools. First of all, I'm going to include the package, and then I'm going to use tools context, say register. This attribute means that we are attaching our layout. We're making the context of it equals to our Java class, so we can access from the Java class the parts from this layout. To do so, we have the UI package. So inside, I'm going to create a new package called, mm, how do we call it? As an example, let's say uh, connection. Inside connection, I'm going to create two Java classes. The first is being login and the second is being register. Okay, so both of them needs to extend the app compat activity in order to have an access to the application, in order for application to have access for these classes. And the same goes for this. So that will tell for the Android device that this class is actually compatible. All right. So once we've created this, we have to change something in our Android manifest file. First of all, what I'd like to change, what I'd like to add is uh, these two activities that we just created. We have to add it uh, inside our Android manifest file. Otherwise, it will not recognize your Java classes and nothing will happen. And even some errors might pop up. So, mm, okay, this is looking good. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to reassign the launch activity. So I think that would be the register one, or the login one probably. Let's go for with register for the first time. I'm gonna go with intent filter here. I'm gonna have category, which is going to be a launcher, right? So as of Android 12, Android exported must be set use true to make the activity available to other apps. Well, we don't want that, but we have to include Android exported attribute. Okay. Um, yep, this is looking good, and I'm gonna remove the launcher category from our main activity. And now our application will start from the register activity, right? So, okay, everything looks fine as for now, I guess. Okay, let's export here also. I'm gonna say false. And the theme, of course, we have to specify the theme. We don't need an action. I'm just gonna copy the theme from main activity and paste it here. Okay, so far so good. And let me get back to these activities because now I have to reassign the context values for our layouts. Okay, as we can see, it says that there are two usages of this this thing. If you press to it, it displays all the usages it has. And as you can see, tools context and Android name that we just created. So each activity, or whether that would be a fragment, needs to have some overridden methods. I'm going to talk about the first of one, which is being on create method. Um, okay, so what this on create method does, uh, as you might have guessed by the name of it, it just creates all the attributes and all the elements that you want to include in the Java class. So even if you attach, for example, the content view as r.layout, uh, as I've said on the previous videos, uh, everything goes from r dot starts actually links everything. If you want to link the layout or ID or whatever, the string value, color, you go with r dot first. So since it is being activity register, choosing that. So all things should be inside our own create method. Now I'm gonna quickly create function called, how do we call it? Say user register. And that I'm gonna just access this inside our own create method. Otherwise, our function will have no meaning. It will just not execute itself. It will not launch. The user will not see it. Um, so first of all, we need, do we have progress? Yes, we do have progress dialog here. I want to include the progress dialog just quickly. So the progress dialog should take uh, context as the argument. So the context, we just say this, which means we're taking the context of our class, of any class that we specify the function in. So the progress dialog sets message, any character sequence. In this case, we're not going to display any message. And let's say that we need to show the progress dialog. So previously, I briefly went through importing retrofit. I'm going to do this again. So on the second build Gradle file, um, what do we have here is all the imports, all the libraries, additional ones, and actually the main ones. Um, so in this case, I have two libraries imported yet, but there will be more. as we go on. So the first one is being retrofit. As I basically said, retrofit will use this library to connect our PHP uh, with our Android Studio in terms of like coding and working. And this basically will help us to send requests and get back responses from our server. And in order for them to understand each other, we're going to use GSON. To be exact, the converter of it, the retrofit has many converters. We're going to use exactly GSON because it's pretty easy to use. Well, so let's get started. We have, as I said, two fields. We need to wrap them up as final because whenever the value goes for our edit text, uh, it has to be final. So string email, um, it will take the value, whatever the value is inside of our edit text. So we have to specify, I'm going to say that in this part we will have a couple of variables. The first of which is going to be the edit text input edit text. Let's say email edit text and password edit text, right? And the Android Studio will not understand where these two edit texts are coming from, so we have to tell the Android Studio that they are coming from somewhere. To be exact, uh, from the layouts that we assigned. So to do that, I'm gonna go email edit text. For that, we are going to use method called find view by ID. As I said, we have to use r dot. And the next thing is ID, and goes anything that we have written in here as Android ID attribute. In this case, it is being r dot email edit text layout. So let me just paste it. Yep. And the same goes for the password. r.id r underline password text lay. Was that a layout, by the way? Let's take a look. No. We have to go with the inner part of it. Just gonna remove the layout. Okay, now the Android Studio will recognize these two variables and the values assigned to them. So let's go ahead and uh, say that our email string variable is equal to email edit text dot. In order to get the text from it, we just write get text. Uh, we convert it to string and say that we have to trim it. And now it's giving us some exception method invocation to string and produce no pointer exception. Well, that is an obvious thing. So final string password is going to be the same. Password edit text, get text to string trim. And also we can assign we can actually check this. So if some of these values are not basically uh, written, we gotta throw an error. So if, For example, email edit text, get text is, or is it just, okay, get text null, and, or, or we can actually say it right in after we assign. If email is empty, and, or, I mean, or we actually have to go with and here. The password is empty. Then we have to do something, right? Um, we have to close the progress dialog, dismiss, and just return, or return, no, okay. Or maybe we can just close the progress dialog, and we can show some toast message as an example. Uh, and again, we have to specify that toast message inside our string. So we're gonna say toast underline error empty uh, lo login register login register credits. Some please enter the values. Okay, so in order to show the toast message, we go and type toast, and the Android Studio will actually give a suggestion to create a new toast. So we just press it, and it automatically wraps up the whole method. In this case, it's taking the context, and the text should be r.string.toast error empty login register credits, right? So else we are going to execute some method. Yeah, else statement has empty body. Oh, I mean, of course it has. So in this case, we are going to use GSON converter and retrofit. So this is going to be the first time that we're going to use that. And I would actually like to do something with our if statements. Um, with our if statements. Okay, maybe we're not gonna have that, but I think, I mean, I hope that you understood some of the toast stuff. So if email edit text, get text, and password edit text, get text is equal to null. Oh, excuse me, it's not equal to null. If it has some value, you have to execute this function. Yep. So, let's say JSON equals new JSON builder. First, we're gonna set the linen because it will, otherwise it will throw an error and the application will not execute. I'm gonna say create. So the next thing is we're going to use straight our retrofit. We're creating a retrofit variable. I'm gonna use retrofit builder. So here we need a couple of things. I'm going to quickly and briefly create a new package. And the package would be called, let's say, so what would be called? Let's say handlers. Yep, handlers, and create a new Java class called helpers. Yeah. So in this helper class will contain uh, all the constant variables that we're going to use and which are not going to be changed at all. So I'm going to say public, static, final, string, base URL. As you might have understand, the base URL will contain the URL value which we used in Postman. As you may remember by the previous videos, we used Postman to test the PHP scripts. And in this case, we're just going to enter the URL that we used in Postman. So in this case, let me quickly to go to IP. You may use whatever platform you'd like to use, and use this. So the port is IT by default. We say that we say that the how do we call? Let me quickly check the Visual Studio Code. In our Visual Studio Code, we call it as social PHP public slash uh slash whatever the value you wanna go with. Yeah, whatever value you wanna go with. Currently it will store only one string value, and the future videos will just have more, you know. Okay, I'm gonna use base URL as helpers base URL. Yep. And to use GSON, we're gonna use an attribute called add converter factory. GSON converter factory create, and inside gonna say that it is an being in our variable. I'm gonna use build. Uh, these like 10 lines of code is going to be the main ones, and they're going to be a bit repetitive. So, yep, they're going to be a bit repetitive. Okay, moving on to the next one, we we need to create something which is going to be inside our handlers package. We are going to create an interface. I'm going to call it just API. So basically, this interface will store all the data about pulling requests and getting responses. All right, guys, apparently I recorded everything. I completed the video, and um, from this part it just broke. No, it didn't broke. I made a stupid mistake. I forgot to press the recording button, which is so stupid, and I have to go for it. over again. So I've changed the URL. Now it looks like this. Basically, nothing, almost nothing is changed, and we've stopped at API. Uh, so I explained overall the functionality of this interface. So I'm gonna use the URL encoded form as you remember in the previous videos, I used in Postman. Um, so we have to declare our method, which is being post, uh, and functions that we wrote in register and login, but we're not typing the slash because in our helpers Java class, the slash comes at the end. Um, so we're just typing the names, post register, and I'm going to use uh, call, the retrofit call, uh, and we have to store the response somewhere. So to do that, I'm gonna create a class called result. I already named it, and as I said, unfortunately, the video didn't record. So I'm creating a Java class, result. Sorry, creating public boolean error, and we have to also create the constructor boolean error. This error equals error, okay, and the getter method, which is error. Okay, and I'm gonna create a new package. I'm gonna call it models, and inside of this package will be stored all the models that we have. This is all based to object-oriented programming. The first model that we're gonna create is user. Um, the user will contain ID, private string, email, and password. Um, it will have also uh, two constructors, not one, but two. The first one will be used only, I hope so, only in login and register classes. And the second one is going to be used everywhere else. The difference is that it will not contain, the second constructor will not contain uh, a password field, so that from the client side you would not access to the password. So we're creating ID and email. Um, this ID equals ID, this email equals email. Okay. And the getter methods for ID, for email, and that's it. Yes. Um, and let's just declare the setter methods. Okay. So the model, the user object is ready, and we can go ahead and type the result. It is the class we just created. Uh, and you have to name the function. I'm gonna give it register username. We have to use fields in order to describe the fields that we have inside our PHP script. We have two fields, email and password. String email. The value inside of these quotation marks, it has to be identical to the PHP script. Password. Okay, we copy and paste this. Um, gonna change it slightly for the login part. Okay, so far so good. So far so good. In result, I'm gonna declare user model. I'm gonna use it in the constructor of this user equals user and get user. Okay, good. So uh, in login and register part, as I said, the video didn't record, so I changed something. I just removed the condition and just wrote the bare function itself. But now I'm gonna correct it a little bit. I'm gonna copy this email and password fields that we have, and I'm gonna paste them in up on the top. And if our email is not empty and our password is not empty, we're gonna execute this method, which is inside. Uh, I went through GSON and Retrofit, and now we have to call it. So I'm going to use the API interface, create new variable, um, Retrofit create API class. So then I'm gonna call the API, call the request. Just name it as call. So API and the function that we have, since it's being a register class, I'm going to use register user, and it's gaining two variables, email and password. So we have two methods. The execute method is the first one, but we're not going to use that. Instead, we're going to use enqueue method, and I'm going to choose the first suggestion that is giving, which is a callback, which is creating a new callback. The new callback comes with two functions on response and on failure. They're overridden functions. So they execute it basically whenever you have any response, uh, the onResponse method comes, and whenever you have no response but have a failure, this onFailure method is executed. So I'm gonna quickly create the user object variable, and I'm gonna say that it is equal to new user. So to gain uh, the response parts and all the information coming from response, you have to type response body, uh, in this case just user, and whatever value you have. In this case we have to specify get ID and get email. So as you can see, it says that the response body may produce a null pointer exception, so we have to write a condition if the body is not equal to null. Okay, good. And after that, we have to switch to the main activity, right? So basically, first of all, we need to close the progress dialog. And second of all, I'm creating intent. Intent, as I explained on the cracked video, on not recorded video, basically I was talking to myself for 40 minutes or so. So intent is basically helpful in relationships of one activity with another activity. For example, if you want to transfer some data from, let's say, login activity to main activity, uh, you use intent, or whether that would be activity from activity to fragment or from fragment to activity, use intent. But unfortunately, intent doesn't, I mean, mostly intent doesn't work in relations from fragment to fragment. In this case, you have to use fragment manager, and it is a bit complex than intent, because if you make one single mistake, your activity will not switch or the data will not be transferred. So in this case, I'm creating a new intent. I'm saying that it should switch from register to main activity, to a set main activity class. And I'm going to use start activity. Inside, I'll have intent as an argument. So the only thing left is to declare the button register. Uh, we also have to specify it button find RIT and our register button. Whenever you press the button, for that we have set on click listener command. It is basically whenever you press whatever that is assigned to it, something executes inside of it. In this case, it is our function user register, right? Um, so I'm also using lambda to make it short. Uh, if we'll not use lambda, it will look like we have to manually write the overridden function on click, and that will take an excess 4 lines of code. So lambda is pretty useful in this case. And I'm going to create one more function to switch from register page to login page. Let's say private void switch to login. I'm gonna use the same intent, but instead of main activity, I'm gonna use login class. Yeah. So also we have to uh, create our text view as a link, what I did in the previous video. So text view login, set on click listener, and the function is switch to login. Good. Looking pretty good actually. And let me copy all of this in and paste it, instead of login. Let's say user login, um, and create a button and call it button login. Uh, button login equals find view by ID, L login button. So set on click listener, user login. Okay. The same goes for the text view. Set on click listener, switch. This should be switched to register. I'm going to rename. It goes from login to register. This goes from login, and it doesn't have user variable. Yep, now it has it. And one thing we need to change is the name of the function, which is login user. Okay, this is looking pretty much fine. Yep. Okay. Now, what is left to do? The first of all, on the previous video, I made a mistake. I wrote this design dependency, which doesn't exist for Android X. It is already included as material, so just go ahead and delete the design dependency. And in Android Manifest, I slightly made changes. I don't remember if I did it on the recorded video, uh, but whatever, just look at the code if you missed something. And most importantly, we have to include the permission for Android Studio to gain access to the internet of the phone. Mm, Yep. Otherwise, the server side will just not work. It will not connect your application to the network. So, so far so good, I think. Yep. Everything looks fine. So, what is happening with the preview? Okay. You see that the why I don't like the newer versions of Android Studio. It is pretty laggy, buggy, and unfortunately I had to switch to the newer versions of Android Studio because of one single mistake related to the SDK. So let's try to launch it. So Pixel 5 API. I'm gonna launch it on inside the emulator. And yes, I launched it on unrecorded video. Right. By the way, did we make the, okay, yes, we made the conditions that if we type email and leave the password, it will not execute. Okay, so the login register pages, they switch with each other, test. Okay, let's try to register. And now, as we can see, we switch to the main activity, and in here we have our account created. So for now, this is going to be it for this video. So the third episode is over now. On the next video, I'll try to make some adjustments related, for example, to switching from main activity to login page, which should not be. So the next video will correct something, um, and we'll talk about shared preferences. Yep, shared preferences. As I said, it is basically a client-based database. So we'll store the user information inside of shared preferences in order for the app to work a bit faster. Yep. Um, so that's it for today. I have my Discord channel and Patreon page. You may subscribe. And till the next video, have a great day.